Right, so this is going to be a little bit of a pain in the ass filming this way because the light is behind me. So for me to step in, I'm going to cut the fucking light off, but there's not really much I can do about it. So I'm just going to try and stand off to the side and hope the shadow doesn't affect too much. Also, yes, I'm holding the phone, I'm holding the camera, so I'm going to try and keep it as still as I can. But this is not going to be super up close because of the fact that I'm cutting off the light and holding the phone. But I've, um, James over at Texas Honda Channel he's just posted numbers from his base model boosted K series Mazda truck that he put together, which is awesome. It's always cool when somebody can do shit like that. But as far as talking about the numbers, he kind of landed at like 270, I believe, or 280, or right around that area, 274, 284, something like that in horsepower. And that's of course talking about it back and forth. Like, yeah, that's right around the sweet spot for where you want to keep the limitations of the K20A3 because the rods aren't as chunky as the Vtec rods that come in, or the stock Vtec rods from the K20A2, the PRB, the Type S, Type R, because I do believe all those rods are about the same. So I went ahead and because I recently just cleaned up a set of rods that were all rusted out, these base model rods. I was like, oh, I have those on hand. I know I have some Type S rods also on hand or out of an engine. So let me just put those two side by side. And then I was like, oh, well, I've also got a B20 torn down. So let me, make the B series comparison. All right. So it's D series, base model K, B series, Type S, or, big VTEC. This is S2K rod, and this is a forged S2K rod. But I mean, this could be forged anything because generally speaking, they're all about the same. But I thought, because I'm always talking about different power levels for stock because everybody wants to know how much power you can make stock, how much power you can make stock, right? And so now I don't have the bolts here to show you the bolt thickness difference because there really is a big noticeable difference between the base model rod bolts versus what the big VTEC are. It's about the thickness is about twice the size. I guess I do have like some K24 rods I could show you, but too far gone for that now. It's too late. I'm not going to go digging around again. At this point, the camera's already rolling, so we are on the spot. All right, so now longtime viewers that actually keep a good memory on certain things like these, because if this kind of shit's important to you, you should know whereabouts I rate everything. The K series, especially, and the S2K, especially nowadays, we have a lot of people doing big numbers on it, so you should have an idea where those are going to be at. But all right, so I was telling him, I was telling James, right around 300 is where you want to stop. That's a sweet spot because any more than that, and it's kind of like, hit or miss on how long it's going to last before it blows up. If you want to keep it healthy, you keep it around 300. Now, the reason why I'm doing this now is because I was thinking about the B series. And B series, I give it a little bit more leeway. 350 if you want to keep it long and healthy. As long as you don't do anything crazy or have any mistakes, your engine should hold together at 350 on these rods. Do we occasionally see 400 horsepower out of those stock rods or whatnot? Yeah, it's possible, but if you want to keep it, keep the longevity, it's better for that. Now, so why I went to go do it is because I'm looking at the rod side by side. I was like, oh shit, like it seems like the K20A3 rod is maybe bigger than the B series, and then actually get them side by side and start comparing them because it was like I was just looking at it earlier versus actually going and seeing it. Shit, the fucking shadows. There. Well, you can kind of see. Damn, this is kind of terrible. Anyway, you got a lot more journal, a lot more beef in the thickness where it actually grabs the crank. You got a lot more rod there. Even the neck, I hope you can tell. I can see from naked eye that we got a little bit more beef there too. It's not quite as thin as the K20A3. Now, the D series, I tell everybody, 200 horsepower is your safe limit. Do not pass 200 horsepower. And it's like, well, this guy made 300 on his. Yeah, I also know people who have made a 300 horsepower pass on a dyno, took it to the street, and immediately exploded. And it's super obvious to tell that these are little teeny tiny baby rods. Like there's not much to these. It's not much to it at all. Put some perspective. The rods smaller than the pinky. It's not even maybe you could say I have fat hands. That's about pinky width. Now, if you compare it to the A3 rod, the A3 rod is clearly a bit beefier. It's got a little bit more to it. Well, I guess yeah. Well, maybe not even. Well, yeah. It's a fatter all around journal. You got a little bit more material there. Generally speaking, like I said, the D series don't like to last too long. Could you squeeze up to potentially 250 horsepower? Yeah, but again, every bit you go past 200 is when you're taking a big chunk out of your reliability. It's just not, and when people tend to blow up D series, it's not just a typical spun bearing. It's like shattered rod exploding out of the block, and I've seen a whole bunch of those. I've taken apart engines with holes in them and seen the complete damage where the rod just snaps off and it's broken the girdle from flipping around in there with a broken ice off piston and shit. It's crazy carnage. So generally speaking, when D series tend to fail from people pushing them too hard, they tend to shatter, which is much like what happens with the L15 from the new SIs. They're also a piece of shit. They're very similar to that in size. Okay, so K28.3 base rod, B series again, 350 horsepower. Yeah, it is. It does seem a bit beefier than the K28.3 base model. You got a little bit more thickness at the neck of the shaft itself of the rod, and you seem to have like a decent amount more at the base. But then again, it could be just because of the fact that it's a smaller diameter, so it's just got a little bit more squished in there. But and then we got the the PRBs, the Type S rods. Now people have touched on 700 horsepower with these things, and that's also a lot to do with in the tuning, the size of the turbo, and all that stuff. It seems to be that 500 horsepower is it's a lot. I've seen a lot of builds last for years at 500 horsepower, and there's also been a lot of builds I've seen last 600 horsepower for a long time. Personally, if I'm doing a stock rod build, I wouldn't take it past 500. Or if I took it past 500, like let's say we do the last dyno pull and it comes up as 523 or 533 or something like that, that would just be the cutoff, like right around that 500 horsepower area. But people are taking them higher. Now the S2000, I was telling a lot of people that I wanted 500 horsepower, and that was gonna be my limit, and I was gonna, I was thinking about doing the stock rods. There's a lot of people who were telling me that was crazy. A lot of people I know personally were telling me, like, why would you do that? Well, again, you see that just if the PRBs, if these rods are taking a 700 horsepower beating, then it's kind of easy to see how these could be doing the same. It's also, again, clearly naked eye, a much beefier rod. There's just a lot more to it. As a matter of fact, so far this is the biggest stock Honda rod I've seen. I have a J series block I've been sitting on literally for years. I haven't taken it apart, but I think the J I have is the weaker J, so I would expect the rods to be probably similar to the base model K28.3 or the base model K in general. But yeah. So I remember when I took apart the S2000, I was like, God damn, it's no wonder why these things are making so much power. And like, I'm pretty sure that's the heaviest duty fucking rod I've ever pulled out of a Honda. It's crazy to think, like, just from the heft and the size of this damn thing, that these are both 4-cylinder engines, and both like 2-liter 4-cylinder engines. They definitely engineered the fuck out of the F20C and the F22. Oh, I guess, yeah, this is a 2.2. I guess F22 I pulled out of. Although, no, yeah, they're different rods, same pistons. And then, of course, generally speaking, like I said, K or the H beam, which is generally speaking about, what you'd expect from all the same, Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I thought maybe it'd be cool for you guys to see just all these laid out at one spot at one time. I throw out horsepower numbers a lot of times. It's just an aggregation of what you can see physically in front of you, plus what you see in regular and the tuning and the numbers. And for you guys that don't know about the L15, the L15s are very similar in size of the D series. The 1.5 liter engine, it is a baby engine, guys. So those 1.5s aren't really taking a lot of beating either. And also when they fail, they tend to disintegrate the rods and throw them all over the place. And they tend to fail right around 300 horsepower. There's a lot of unhappy SI owners that I've seen locally and I've talked to. And again, it's got nothing to do with their builder or whatnot or their tuner. It's just because they just don't last. And even when they're being built, they're not lasting as long as they should. Because people are completely building a block to get 300 horsepower, and it's still blowing up from issues. The L15 and ESIs kind of got similar life expectancy issues as a fucking Subaru WRX would have. Anyway, so again, rambling here now at this point. I guess I'll talk. Just one last neat little shot of having all the rods out there out there laid out. It's just good idea knowing your limitations, expected, and where you can stop, expectations or whatnot. K series or a dime a dozen nowadays. They don't really cost that much to get another one. So if you already have a K car and you have a stock K in there and you want to boost the fuck out of it and it blows up, then it's not really that big a deal to just get another block. Especially with a K24 base models, like you can buy a K24 base model and get pistons or rods for that without being a hassle and keep your head. So again, it's not a big deal. Eventually, if I keep my S2K long term, I'm going to K swap it just because of the fact that I can do that. I'll be able to cycle out engines a lot easier. So, because the S2000 engines are just, they're really fucking expensive. They're still, I think I have seen a couple blocks sell locally for a decent price with, unknown conditions or whatnot. Or just going off of what people are saying. But even one that you don't have, that you don't open, they're still selling for $600. And that's just a short block. Long blocks are selling for $3,000-$4,000 when you can find them. So again, just to keep up with the fact that it's easier to switch out engines, and I plan on maybe pushing some power, it'd be the S2000. And my benchmark horsepower number is still the same. It's still going to be around 500 horsepower, even though I got forged rods. But it's always good to have forged rods for mistakes and mishaps. Like if you miss shift or whatnot, you over rev the engine by chance or whatever, there's a lot less chance that you're going to throw a bearing if you're already at the limits on a stock rod and then a mistake happens, something happens where you fuck up, then you're already pushing the limits of what it can handle, and then you jerk more power into it or ask for more response, and then that's how shit fails. A lot of times when these stock engines are blowing up nowadays, it's not because the engine's just giving up. It's because something happened. Like when you're racing, it doesn't matter how good of a racer you are, when you're fucking slamming through gears and whatnot, or if you dump shift, suddenly trying to get something or trying to get going, anything can happen. I mean, even now, I'm a pretty good fucking driver, and I miss fourth, it's not an infrequent thing. I wouldn't say all the time, but it happens more than I'd like in the fucking Type R. So little shit like that happens when I'm just driving around or when I go to hit it or whatnot, to just remind me of the fact that mistakes can happen and mistakes can sideline your car for a long time. So it's not, if you have the option to go big, then I would always say, if you're planning on beating up your car, then you want to get your insurance, you want to get your padding, so you can beat up the car and feel a little bit better about it. But at the same time too, it's completely fine to keep it stock and make some power. You just need to know where you're gonna keep it. You just need to know the limitations of what you're dealing with. Whatever your safe limit is to keep it, and then back it down 5 or 10%. Just to give you some little bigger room. All right, guys. So that is 4 or 5 o'clock in the fucking morning. I'm gonna cut it off now. If you guys got any questions that you want to ask, any tech tips or whatever, drop it in the comments below. If you got business you want to talk, you want to buy something, hit me up on Instagram. That's where I'm most active nowadays, the shit that I see most often. But again, if you got any questions regarding your cars or builds or whatever, just drop in the comments, because I get too many of the same questions over and over and over again in my DMs. And the reason why I made the YouTube channel is that way I can answer everybody's thing without having to do it repeatedly. So 6 years later, I'm still doing that. So just drop in the comments, guys. And social media links are down below. And peace. Thanks for watching.